Yeah, my dear devotees, all glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So today we're beginning on Bhagavad Gita, as it is, chapter 3, entitled Karma Yoga, and text number 1. What does that say?
Yeah, that's fine.
It's okay?
Yeah.
People can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so chapter 3 of the Bhagavad Gita, the text 1, it says, Arjuna Uvacha, Jayasi Chet Karmanaste, Mata Buddhir Janardana, Tat Kim Karmani Gore Mam, Niyo Jayasi Keshava. And the English translation is the following. Arjuna said, O Janardana, O Keshava, why do you want to engage me in this ghastly warfare if you think that intelligence is better than fruitive work? Very good question by Arjuna. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And he says, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, has very elaborate described the constitution of the soul in the previous chapter with a view to delivering his intimate friend Arjuna from the ocean of material grief. And the path of realization has been recommended, Buddhi Yoga or Krishna consciousness. Sometimes Krishna consciousness is misunderstood to be inertia. And one with such a misunderstanding often withdraws to a secluded place to become fully Krishna conscious by chanting the holy name of Lord Krishna. Well, that is not exactly wrong, but let's see what else it says here before I make a statement. But without being trained in the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, it is not advisable to chant the holy name of Krishna in a secluded place where one may acquire only cheap adoration from the innocent public. Arjuna also thought of Krishna consciousness or Buddhi Yoga or intelligence and spiritual advancement of knowledge as something like retirement from active life and the practice of penance and austerity at a secluded place. In other words, he wanted to skillfully avoid the fighting by using Krishna consciousness as an excuse. Mm-hmm. But as a sincere student, he placed the matter before his master and questioned Krishna as to his best course of action. In answer, Hare Krishna, Lord Krishna elaborately explained karma yoga or work in Krishna consciousness in this third chapter, Haribol. Okay, so Arjuna wanted to avoid fighting by using Krishna consciousness as an excuse. In other words, spiritual people don't get into fights. They don't kill people and things like that. But sometimes it's necessary. And sometimes things are interpreted in a matter of one's own sense gratification. Okay, so that's a very subtle point. And it says here, okay, let's read the purport. And the path of realization has been recommended. Oh, wait a minute, let me come back. So it says that The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, has very elaborately described the constitution of the soul in the previous chapter, with a view in delivering his intimate friend Arjuna from the ocean of material grief. 1 second, please. What is this? Yeah, Hare Krishna. Hi. Okay, no problem. Right. Do you want that tile in the Samamish temple? Okay, we have to come to the temple and speak with Taraka. So, sorry, excuse me, a man called me just now. He wants to get a name tile, one or two for his family members. So that's a good thing. Okay, so we are Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, and verse 1. Okay, so let me start all over again. So it says, Arjuna said, O Janardana, O Keshava, why do you want to engage me in this ghastly warfare if you think that intelligence is better than fruitive work? Very good question by Arjuna. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, has very elaborately described the constitution of the soul in the previous chapter, with a view to delivering his intimate friend Arjuna from the ocean of material grief. And the path of realization has been recommended, Buddhi Yoga or Krishna consciousness. Sometimes Krishna consciousness is understood to be inertia. Huh? Misunderstood. Sometimes Krishna consciousness, I'm sorry. Sometimes Krishna consciousness is misunderstood to be inertia. Inertia means doing nothing. And one with such a misunderstanding often withdraws to a secluded place to become fully Krishna conscious by chanting the holy name of Lord Krishna. But without being trained in the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, it is not advisable to chant the holy name of Krishna in a secluded place, where one may acquire only cheap adoration from the innocent public. Arjuna also thought of Krishna consciousness or Buddhi yoga or intelligence and spiritual advancement of knowledge as something like retirement from active life and the practice of penance and austerity at a secluded place. In other words, he wanted to skillfully avoid the fighting by using Krishna consciousness as an excuse. Very clever. But as a sincere student, he placed the matter before his master and questioned Krishna as to his best course of action. In answer, Lord Krishna elaborately explained karma yoga or work in Krishna consciousness in this third chapter. Okay, so there's a lot of good points here. And what we definitely don't want to do is use the Vedas in an incorrect way in order to support our own sense gratification. That is what we definitely should never do. And that's what they're talking about in this report. So it says, Arjuna also thought of Krishna consciousness or Buddhi yoga or intelligence and spiritual advancement of knowledge as something like retirement from active life and the practice of penance and austerity at a secluded place. In other words, he wanted to skillfully avoid the fighting by using Krishna consciousness as an excuse. See, let's not forget now, Krishna is trying to convince Arjuna to fight. Arjuna has put down his bow and arrow and says, I cannot fight. And now he's having a discussion with Krishna. And Krishna is trying to convince him to pick up the bow and arrow and start fighting. And so Arjuna is giving very, let's say, very erudite arguments why he should not fight. But that is not becoming of Arjuna because Arjuna is a warrior. He's trained to be a fighter, but not for sense gratification, but for protecting the principles of Dharma. He's not an ordinary fighter. He's a very high class fighter who is commissioned to protect the principles of Dharma. So here he's going to violate everything he's learned by not wanting to fight. But he's been trained to fight, you see. So this is completely out of his, let's say, normal duty. He's going to violate his normal duty. So here Prabhupada explains, he says that Arjuna also thought of Krishna consciousness or Buddhi yoga or intelligence and spiritual advancement of knowledge as something like retirement from active life and the practice of penance and austerity at a secluded place. In other words, he wanted to skillfully avoid the fighting by using Krishna consciousness as an excuse. Now, why is that? Well, because he has relatives on both sides of the, let's say, dispute. So one side are close family members, the other side are guru and other great personalities. And so he doesn't see how he will be happy if he wins or he loses. Now, this is a personal, sense gratificatory, let's say, desire. It has nothing to do with fighting on the basis of Shastra. He's not going to be comfortable one way or the other. If he kills his guru, or if he kills his close family members die, either way, he's not going to be happy. Why? Well, it's not a question of why. He's only thinking about himself. He's not thinking about what is actually right. So this is called sense gratification. It says here, Arjuna also thought of Krishna consciousness or Buddhi yoga or intelligence and spiritual advancement of knowledge as something like retirement from active life and the practice of penance and austerity at a secluded place. In other words, he wanted to skillfully avoid the fighting by using Krishna consciousness as an excuse. But as a sincere student, he placed the matter before his master and questioned Krishna as to his best course of action. In answer, Lord Krishna elaborately explained karma yoga, or work in Krishna consciousness, in this third chapter. So the most important takeaway from this purport is that a sincere student always places a matter before his spiritual master and questions what is his best course of action. We should never act. If we're, let's say, an initiated devotee, we should never act independently. We should always, before we have to make a decision of something that's important in our life, get the validation from bona fide spiritual master or spiritual masters. So a sincere student places a matter before his spiritual master and questions what is his best course of action. This is very important for one who's initiated. If you're not initiated, okay, you can make so many decisions by yourself. A lot of those decisions will probably be wrong from the spiritual point of view. And it will be, catastrophic for your spiritual life. But if you are a sincere student of Krishna consciousness and place different matters that you're dealing with before your spiritual master and ask questions of what is the best course of action. And this is very important for anyone who wants to be a bona fide student or a disciple. Why? Because if you accept initiation from a spiritual master, that means you're not going to make any major decisions in your life without getting the validation of a spiritual master. If you act independently, then that is what you would call a breach of confidence. What does a person do at the moment of initiation? They promise no meat eating, no gambling, no illicit sex, no intoxication, and always chanting Hare Krishna. But it's also understood that from the moment of initiation, that one will not make any major decisions in their life without getting the validation of the spiritual master. In fact, even if it's a small decision or a big decision, one should always get the validation of the spiritual master or the advice of the spiritual master. Therefore, Prabhupada explains here, but without being trained in the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, it is not advisable to chant the holy name of Krishna in a secluded place where one may acquire only cheap adoration from the innocent public. Arjuna also thought of Krishna consciousness or Buddhi yoga or intelligence and spiritual advancement of knowledge as something like retirement from active life and the practice of penance and austerity at a secluded place. In other words, he wanted to skillfully avoid the fighting by using Krishna consciousness as an excuse. But as a sincere student, that's a very important statement. As a sincere student, he placed the matter before his master and questioned Krishna as to his best course of action. This is what we all always should do. Or, that's question. In answer, Lord Krishna elaborately explained karma yoga or work in Krishna consciousness in this third chapter. So, basically, Arjuna wanted to avoid fighting by using Krishna consciousness as an excuse. Sometimes things are interpreted in a matter of dovetailing one's own sense gratification. Uh, uh, one's own sense gratification. That means that one wants to gratify one's own sense gratification, and therefore, like Arjuna here, he wants to avoid fighting by using Krishna consciousness as an excuse. So, in the discussion that Arjuna is going to have with Krishna, he's going to make many points that seem to make a lot of sense and are valid in certain circumstances. But in the particular circumstances that he finds himself in, his arguments are wrong. And Krishna will debunk them. So therefore, it says, but without being trained in the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, it is not advisable to chant the holy name of Krishna in a secluded place where one may acquire only cheap adoration from the innocent public. Arjuna also thought of Krishna consciousness or Buddha yoga or intelligence and spiritual advancement of knowledge as something like retirement from active life and the practice of penance and austerity at a secluded place. In other words, he wanted to skillfully avoid the fighting by using Krishna consciousness as an excuse. But as a sincere student, he placed the matter before his master and questioned Krishna as to his best course of action. In answer, Lord Krishna elaborately explained karma yoga or work in Krishna consciousness in this third chapter. So, as we said, the sincere student will always place a matter before his spiritual master and questions what is his best course of action. All right, so this is an extremely important point. If one asks to be initiated and then has to go through a process of qualification to be initiated and then actually becomes initiated, then they cannot make any, let's say, decision without getting the validation of the spiritual master, or at least the opinion of the spiritual master. Now, does that mean one is a slave? No. It just means that one has a duty to always get validated in their actions by a superior, let's say, superior personality, like spiritual master. Prabhupada says, sometimes things are interpreted in a manner of dovetailing one's own sense gratification. In the Gaudiya Math, different God brothers took the words of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur in different interpretation for sense gratification, and the whole mission was disrupted. Why did Prabhupada say this? Well, it's what actually happened. It's very easy to misunderstand the words of the spiritual master and concoct different interpretations for one's own sense gratification, and therefore the whole mission of Krishna consciousness can be disrupted. So the Vedas, okay.
Your notes, Maharaj?
Huh?
Is that from your note?
Yes. Yeah, sometimes people use the words of the Vedas by giving their own interpretation to satisfy their own purposes of sense gratification. Now, in the Isha Upanishad, Mantra 9, where is the Upanishad? Where do I have it? It should be here somewhere. That's not the Isha. Is that the? No, that's not it. Yeah. What? Yeah. Isha Upanishad. Yeah, there it is. And Isha Upanishad, text number 9. Let's take a look at what it says. Yeah, that one. Anham tamaha parishanti ye vidyam upasate tato bhuyayavate tamo yayu vidyayam rataha. Those who engage in the culture of nescient, meaning ignorant activities, shall enter into the darkest region of ignorance. Worse still are those engaged in the culture of so-called knowledge. Okay, in the purport it says, this mantra offers a comparative study of vidya and avidya, knowledge or ignorance. Avidya or ignorance is undoubtedly dangerous, but vidya or knowledge is even more dangerous when mistaken or misguided. Oh, that's the gospel truth. This mantra of Shisha Upanishad is more applicable today than at any time in the past. Modern civilization has advanced considerably in the field of mass education, but the result is that people are more unhappy than ever before because of the stress placed on material advancement to the exclusion of the most important part of life, the spiritual aspect. As far as Vidya is concerned, the first mantra has explained very clearly that the Supreme Lord is the proprietor of everything, and that forgetfulness of this fact is ignorance. The more a man forgets this fact of life, the more he is in darkness. In view of this, a godless civilization directed toward the so-called advancement of education is more dangerous than a civilization in which the masses of people are less educated. I love this. I love this particular statement. And every time I read it, it just shows the brilliance of Srila Prabhupada. In view, it says, a godless civilization directed toward the so-called advancement of education is more dangerous than a civilization in which the masses of people are less educated. So what is this saying actually? Well, when people are less educated, they usually accept what a bona fide guru says. When people are very highly educated in the mundane world, they'll start arguing about different points of Krishna consciousness, because they read this philosopher and then they read that other philosopher. And they say, well, so-and-so said this and so-and-so says that. And it just becomes, one long, it's what you would call
debate.
Huh?
It's a debate, right?
Yeah, you could say it's a debate or a diatribe of nonsense. So, of the different classes of men, karmis, jnanis, and yogis, the karmis are those who are engaged in the activities of sense gratification. In the modern civilization, 99.9% of the people are engaged in the activities of sense gratification under the flags of industrialism, economic development, altruism, political activism, and so on. All these activities are more or less based on satisfaction of the senses to the exclusion of the kind of God consciousness described in the first mantra. The first mantra of Bhagavad Gita is very simple. It says, Ishavaisham midam sarvam jatyam jagatyam jagatena taktena bunjitaha magritaha kashasvidhanam. Everything animate or inanimate that is within the universe is controlled and owned by the Lord. One should therefore accept only those things necessary for himself, which are set aside as his quota, and one should not accept other things, knowing well to whom they belong. So you see, the concept of proprietorship is absolutely important in Krishna consciousness or in life. The concept of proprietorship. You'll see that there are different concepts of proprietorship. There's capitalism, there's socialism, there's communism, there's Nazism, all different types of concepts of proprietorship, right? So in capitalism, the individual ownership is very much, let's say, prominent. And in when you would say communism, then let's see, when pure communism, all the people are the owners, everybody's. Okay. But there's never been real pure communism. Right? In socialism, the government is the proprietor of almost everything. The banks, is that, almost everything. And in let's say anarchism, nobody is the proprietor. There are anarchic, societies where no one is a proprietor. And then there's also other things like socialism. Well, it's the basically the government and the government cronies that are the proprietors. Right. So the principle of ownership determines the type of society you have. Now, today, the United States is supposed to be is claimed to be a capitalist country, but it's not. It's morphed. It's transformed from capitalism to a mixed capitalism and socialism type of a government, right? And especially after all the 1930s, where there's so much havoc taking place in society, where almost the whole country turned communistic. So in order to you had Governor Roosevelt, he and his wife was a communist, but he wasn't a communist, but he's close to being a communist. They had to socialize a lot of things. Otherwise, there was going to be a revolution because there was such a severe poverty. It was like a breakdown of the society. And it was a breakdown of also the weather because of wildcat exploitation of the soil. There was like a lot of failure of nature, not failure of nature, but failure of farming, and because in the early 1900s, they started doing, they started having tractors and different types of, well, the land was pretty uh, fertile because for millions of years, the animals were peeping, pooping and eating, and so everything was pretty fertile, right? So they just started growing things and not putting anything back in the soil. So at one point, when you get to the 1930s, the soil was like sand almost, and they were not able to really grow things, and they were having these terrible windstorms.
Yeah,
Because
I remember. That's particularly in the Midwest somewhere area, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
no, but those storms went all the way to the
Sandstorms.
eastern part of the United States also.
Yeah.
Sandstorms,
Sandstorm.
right? Because they were not managing the soil properly, right? Why don't you look that up? You see that?
Yeah.
You see, you just can't keep growing on fertile soil and think that it's going to remain fertile forever. Ever. You have to put something back into the soil. That's what nature does. Like, for example, there's a tree, right? So the tree has, uh, leaves, and then the leaves they fall down and they fertilize the land, right? So there's a natural, a program in nature. But if you stop it in one way or another by misappropriation, then you end up with sand. You don't end up with earth that's been rejuvenated, fertile. What does it say?
Yeah, in the early part of the 20th century, sandstorms or dust storms
Yeah.
in the US, particularly during the Dust Bowl of the 1930s, were the result of a combination of poor agricultural practices,
Poor agricultural practices, very good statement.
yeah, and severe drought.
Yeah.
Key factors behind the development of the sandstorms: number one, agricultural expansion and overfarming.
And what?
Overfarming.
Over farming, yeah.
Yeah.
They were not putting back anything. They were just exploiting.
Yeah, during the late 19th and early 20th centuries, large-scale farming expanded rapidly across the Great Plains. Farmers plowed up vast stretches of the natural prairie grass to plant crops such as wheat. The removal of deep-rooted prairie grasses, which had previously anchored the soil, left the topsoil loose and vulnerable to wind erosion.
Hmm.
Technological changes. The invention of mechanized plows allowed farmers to cultivate much larger areas than before. This accelerated the removal of natural vegetation, worsening soil degradation. Drought conditions.
Yeah, they interrupted the natural process of, something grows and then it dies and it becomes, like fertilizer.
Yeah. So then drought conditions beginning in the early 1930s, severe droughts hit the Great Plains region, reducing crop yields, leaving the soil dry and exposed. Without adequate moisture, the topsoil easily broke apart. Droughts led to the loss of vegetation cover, which would normally help retain moisture and keep the soil in place. Wind erosion. With the soil loosened by farming and dried out by drought, strong winds picked up massive amounts of topsoil, creating dust storms, also known as black blizzards. These storms could last for hours or even days and were severe enough to block out sunlight, reduce visibility to near zero, and carry dust across long distances, reaching
Right into the
as far as New York
eastern
and
city.
yeah,
As far as
Washington D.C. Yeah. Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, New Mexico, Colorado were some of the main states affected.
Yeah. all because of over exploitation of the topsoil and not putting anything back, right? So it was horrible. So that's what happens. There's the nature, if you don't like say disturb it too much, then it has its own way of regeneration, generative. Uh, you know, like a tree grows and it has a lot of leaves and it has fruits. So you can pick the fruits and then the leaves fall and the leaves, you know, it's like compost.
And then organic matter.
Organic matter, yeah. Yeah, like for example, now when fall comes, I will go out and stuff
The maple leaves.
stuff the plastic bags, right, with leaves. And then I use those leaves to put in the growing boxes. And then on top of that, I put some cow dung. And then cover that with something else and let it just compost. You know, and by spring, it's all composted, and you know you don't have to buy any compost. It's already done by nature. It's called the oh, what is it? There's a name for that. Anyway, it's nature's natural process. Like leaves are very good compost, very good compost. Add on top of that cow dung. See, cow dung is already composted in the four stomachs of the cow.
Mm.
So now you have the leaves and you have the cows. Usually you put the cow dung first, and you put the leaves on top of that, and then you cover it with something like you know, a tarp, and then you just leave it alone
Yeah.
all winter long, and it composts. You know,
Nice.
and by the way, you'll see
Worms.
plenty of worms.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the worms gone. Yeah.
Yeah.
And now you can you know, you don't have to buy any compost or anything like that, right?
Yeah, and then the plants grow really.
It's very easy. You're just working with nature's natural regenerative farming.
Yeah.
So uh, if you do this, it's remarkable how much fruits and vegetables you can grow. It's amazing. So because I've been sick for a couple of years, I haven't been doing. But before I was sick, I was getting tremendous amount of crops.
Yeah.
So this year I'm going to get back into it because nature. It's just you're just following nature's natural cycle. Yeah. Okay.
Time check, Maharaj.
All right, we're finished. Yeah. Well, anyway, let me just finish this. Ishopanishad. It says, as far as vidya or knowledge is concerned, the first mantra has explained very clearly that the Supreme Lord is the proprietor of everything, and that forgetfulness of this fact is ignorance. The more, well, everyone has forgotten this today, right? The more a man forgets this fact of life, the more he is in darkness. In view of this, a godless civilization directed toward the so-called advancement of education is more dangerous than a civilization in which the masses of people are less educated. Amen. I rest my argument.
Haribol.
Haribol. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Is Prabhupada talking about Americans and Indians now?
Talking about everybody.
And about the education part?
Yeah, talking about everybody. There's too many people that are overeducated in the United States. And then because of that, you know, they don't want to work anymore. They just want to make money and spend money. You know, there's nothing like getting your hands in the soil, planting seeds and then taking care of the seeds and see things grow, Eventually, you have a forest of fruits and vegetables. So today I did go to the farm. We still have nice fruits and vegetables. Nice apples.
Mhm.
Did I bring some?
Yeah, apples, tomatoes.
Yeah, apples.
zucchini.
Yeah, so many things growing still. Plenty of things actually. And it's a miracle. Squashes and apples. Apples. This is a real period for apples right now. This is when they're really good.
Yeah.
And there's still some squash and other things. So now this year, what Janavatsa is doing is completely, uh, cleaning all the overgrowth where we used to plant, and we left it alone for 2 years, and it's full of grass and all kinds of things, but not we couldn't plant anything this year there, so we had to plant other parts of the farm. But now he's cleaning that all up,
Yeah.
and then he's gonna
Relay all the beds, reset
Yeah.
the full beds.
yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
that'll be good for next year. Yeah.
You can start from the spring itself.